When you can't trace God's plans, you must only trust his promises. Hey warriors, and welcome back to Inspirational Cafe. I'm your girl Rochelle. Here is where I uplift, I encourage, and I inspire. Don't forget, hit that like button. Don't forget to share. And come join the cafe where I inspire every single day. Remember to subscribe. When you can't trace God's plans, you must only trust his promises. Trusting God in unusual circumstances and challenging situations can lead to unexpected blessings. The same as it did for Hannah when she was blessed with a boy child by the name of Samuel. Hannah waited, and she waited for so long. Hannah's dedication to God, even when faced with unmet expectations, is a powerful example of finding strength through faith. Even though Hannah, her plans were delayed, she continued to trust God, even when she couldn't trace his plans. Trusting God in difficult and unusual situations can lead to blessings that we can't imagine. We must only trust God totally and completely. When life gets difficult, when life is different than anything we could have ever imagined, we must trust God even when we can't trace him. For the scripture declares in Proverbs 3, 5, and 6, it tells us, it says, trust in the Lord with all thine heart and lean not to our own understanding. Lean not to our difficulty, our moments of feeling defeated, those moments that we're so frustrated we can't think straight. We must not trust in what we see, but we must faithfully move forward into all that God has declared over our lives. It says, trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not to those moments that you feel God has forsaken you. When you feel like you can't take another step forward because life just has become too difficult. Even when we can't trace God, our only job is to just trust him. Trust the plans, the promises that God has made, that he's declared over our lives. We must trust God wholeheartedly and lean not to our own understanding, because we know every promise that God has declared over my life, over your life, is permanent. The scripture tells us in Jeremiah 29 and 11, it declares, I know the plans. Even before we were formed in our mother's womb, God declared, I know the plans that I have for you, declares the Lord. His plans are to prosper us, not to harm us, but to give us hope and a great future. Those are God's words. So even when we can't trace God's plans, we must remember what God declared over our life. God declares, I know the plans. I want to prosper you. I want to give you hope, even when you're hopeless. I want you to remember that even when life gets out of control, when it's so chaotic and confusing, remember that I declared that I want to prosper you. I want to give you hope. And I want you to remember that your future is great. Even when life seems difficult and different than anything we could imagine, God declares that he wants to prosper us all, to give us hope and a great future. I just want to encourage someone to remain hopeful, that even when you can't trace all of God's plans, those moments that you feel lower than a footprint, that you feel like this is a situation that you can't recover from, you won't recover from, God declares, count it all joy. James 1 and 2. Count it all joy when faced with trials, because the testing of our faith develops perseverance. We will never know that we are overcomers if we have nothing to overcome. If we don't have moments where we feel defeated, we feel like we're full of despair, we can't take another step forward. But God declares that even when you can't trace his plans, trust his promises. Hannah believed God wholeheartedly, even though her plan was delayed. She prayed and prayed that God would give her a child. And God blessed her with a son by the name of Samuel. She promised God that if he would grant her petition, that she would give him back. She would give Samuel back to God, because she never stopped believing, even when she couldn't trace his plans. She wholeheartedly believed that God would grant her petition, even though her plan was delayed. Hannah never stopped believing. Her faith was never wavered, because she trusted God just that much to believe that even though God didn't grant her petition just then, she knew that God's promises are permanent. And we must do the same. We must believe God wholeheartedly. And yes, life at times can be difficult and different than anything we could ever expect. But we must trust God even when we can't trace his plans, because God is forever a promise keeper. And whatever God has declared over your life, you must remain faithful and dedicated to believing God wholeheartedly, because God is a man that he cannot lie. He will not lie. God's promises are permanent. And I just want to encourage someone that may feel like life has just been different and difficult. Remember that even when you can't trace God, you must only trust God. Trust in everything that he's declared over your life, because God is indeed a promise keeper. Believe God wholeheartedly and continue to trust God, because God will not lie. He shall not lie. He cannot lie. Trust God even when you can't trace God. I am Rochelle. This is Inspirational Cafe. Until next time, be blessed.